Hi, Kevin Henry with Dental Economics. I'm here today on a Skype interview with Dr. Marc Cooper. And Dr. Cooper has just finished leading a very successful symposium conference in Seattle, and it was called The Summit. So Dr. Cooper, could you tell us a little bit about what happened at The Summit in Seattle?
Sure, be happy to. First, thanks for having me on the interview. I appreciate the opportunity. The purpose of the summit was to educate the dental community in managed group practice, because there's numbers of questions about what is a managed group practice, what is an MSO, what is a DSO, how do they operate, how do they interface. So we brought a panel of experts who work with my clients and myself to look at that particular phenomenon, as well as what could dentists do in terms of preparing themselves for this kind of future. So that was the purpose of the summit. We had 181 attendees, and the interesting thing about the summit, which I think was so unique, was that we had every facet of the dental industry there. We had private practices, we had group practices, we had MSOs, we had DSOs, we had capitalists, we had CPAs, we had vendors. So, and what I did, which was a little tricky, was I didn't put any titles under their names on their name tags. So no one knew if you were a dentist or you were a capitalist or you were a president of an MSO, and people had to interact from a viewpoint that we're all in this together. And that was another intent that I had, was to bring the industry together. In many respects, there is some prejudice and stereotype about who the guy is on the other side. And I work with all the sides. I work with third parties, and I work with dental and private practice and MSOs, and I don't think they have ever sat down and really had a positive discussion with each other. So part of the intent was to bring the community together as a whole and see what would come about out of terms of the summit. Did that answer most of your question, or some of it?
Absolutely, it did. I know before we went on air, we talked a little bit about some of the change that was discussed at the summit and some of the changes happening in the dental industry. What are some of those changes that you all discussed, and what do you see coming down the turnpike?
Oh, this is a pretty expanded conversation, so I'll try to limit it as best I can. The changes are irreversible. So many dentists who are conservative in nature think that this too will pass, and I just want you to know that from my particular viewpoint, and I could be wrong, the changes are irreversible. Things are never going to go back to the way they were. If you look at the growth of managed group practice, and I'm using that in a generic term, their growth in terms of expansion is 20 to 1 compared to private practice. So that's enormous. Two is I'm sure you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire and the famous expression, follow the money. Well, I do follow the money, and if you take a look at the capital infusion by major capitalists and equity partners flowing into dentistry and where it's going, that's pretty much where the future will be, and it's not going into solo practice, it's going into managed group practices. It's kind of like the Wayne Gretzky quote, he skates to where the puck is going to be. Well, capital goes to where the future is going to be. So that's what is occurring. And then there's a lot of statistics that support the assertion that it is going that way. Then you have the other issues, such as kids getting out of dental school owing anywhere from $250,000 to $400,000, and how can they afford to buy practices? Well, they can't. So the asset value of a practice is diminishing. You talk to banks now, and they're a little bit more leery about lending money to people to buy practices. The ADA report, as I understand it, shows that less than 20% of the graduates coming out of dental school or residency are going into ownership. The percentage of female dentists is increasing, and they do not want ownership. In fact, they want more part-time work or employee work than ever before. So I think the writing is pretty clear for people. Now, we have lots of dentists who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into their practices, and their major concern is, what am I going to do with this? And that's one of the issues that we began to address at the summit, is what are you going to do with this asset? An asset that isn't transferable is a liability. and how are you going to handle your asset in the future to make it and sustain its value. So those were some of the things that we addressed at the summit, and that's some of the future that's occurring. Did that answer your question to some degree?
Absolutely. I'm sure it was a very polarizing discussion that you all had. What was kind of the main takeaway that you wanted people to leave Seattle with?
Oh, what I wanted the dentists to see primarily is that it isn't the end of the world, it's the beginning of a new world. There is huge opportunity out there, significant, magical. It's a $110 billion industry. That's bigger than 3/4 of the economies of the world. Dentistry has grown at basically a 5% increase per year. It's pretty recession-proof. If you wanted to go into a business, go into the dentistry business. Now, the solo practice in the old world was significant in terms of how it worked. The system, if I could take a moment, was designed in a particular way. There's 4 components to the system. You'll have to imagine my hands being at this diagram. So one part is over here, which is the patient, and they're the kind of were the driver in the old system, and then you had the provider or the dentist who was the decision maker in the system. And so the axis of power ranged between those two, and the other 2 components were the payer or the third party, and they were pretty passive, and most people wanted to practice, and the employer or the purchaser, who was also passive, who would buy these policies for their employees. Well, the axis of power has shifted from here to here. Now, as you can tell, with Delta and everybody else, the payer has got a lot more say in the way dentistry is delivered by controlling the economics, and the purchaser, the employer, has a lot more power because they want to see certain results. And in this system, where this is the axis of power runs like this, group practice is more successful than solo practice. So with that change, dentists have to start thinking differently about what are they going to do in terms of the future. My view is that groups work, but you can't think I, which is the way dentists are trained. You have to think we, which is a very big gap to close for most dentists. So another element that we wanted to do in the summit was actually have dentists begin to see how to think we, not I, and that's a challenge. So we're challenged with that. Physicians don't have as much problem as dentists getting to the we part.
And I'm sure that challenge translates over into next year's summit, which I know you're already starting to put together. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're looking at evolving a summit. It's different than this one. One of the questions that's come up and that we're looking at developing is, in the 90s, and I'm sure you're aware of this, MSOs and DSOs were tried, Orthodontic Centers of America, Apple Orthodontics, and they all collapsed. And there's numbers of reasons for their failures. In today's world, these things are not failing. They're succeeding, and they're growing rapidly, and they're getting cash infusion, and they're attracting strong executive power from many different areas. And so they're succeeding. We want to look at what is the elements that generate success in these managed group practices at the next summit. That's going to be our viewpoint, what we're going to try to capture.
So tell our viewers where they can reach you, where they can get more information about the summit as we get closer to next year.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate the plug, by the way.
No worries. No problem at all.
So, if they would just go to our website, or they can contact info@masterycompany.com. That's the company name. We'll be happy to send them information about the future summit. And we actually did we recorded the entire summit this year, and we did a video for the last half day of the summit, which was how do DSOs and MSOs interface and how do they operate together. And we're going to make that available hopefully by the end of the month, and they could also order that at our website.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity again. Thank you.
Absolutely.